Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, it's really not only a pleasure but a privilege to contribute and to participate in this webinar. Well, now I will give the floor to Mr. Tsomokos. Mr. Tsomokos is the president and the founder of the Delphi Forum, and really it's an honor for us to be with us. Mr. Tsomokos, the last year, in a multifaceted way, he helped the realization not only this uh, memorandum of understanding between Harvard and the Academy of Athens, but also the implementation of several Delphi meetings. And as we plan today, we're going to plan the next one, Delphi meeting 2025. Thank you. Mr. Tsomokos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madame Trichopoulou, for this generous introduction. Very warm regards to all. We are truly delighted and honored that the Delphi Economic Forum is a partner of this important e-discussion on the sustainable agriculture, food systems and climate action. This important event is sustained by the Academy of Athens. Warmest thanks to Antonia Trichopoulou, a member of the Academy, an initiator of this project, with whom we maintain a cordial and a very fruitful cooperation for many years. Antonia, thank you deeply and very, very much. The Center for Climate Health and the Global Environment at Harvard at Chan School of Public Health is the key contributor, and I would say the stable pillar of these roundtable discussions that we started, as Madame Trichopoulou said, last April at the annual meeting in Delphi. And of course, I trust that we will continue this during our 10th anniversary of the Delphi Economic Forum in April next year, and of course for the years to come as well. I welcome the Harvard professors and I thank them deeply for their participation at this discussion, and I'm looking forward to meeting them in person actually next April in Delphi. Professor Nadeau, Professor Rice, Professor Willett, Professor Petrakis, we thank you all very much. We are truly looking forward to working with you for years to come, and I'm confident that we watch an interesting and very stimulating discussion, which this is something which is related with mankind and with the health of all people. Again, thank you very much, and I would like to reassure you that Delphi Economic Forum will do its utmost to support your very noble endeavors. I thank you very much. Madame Trichopoulou, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Tsomokos. Really, we will meet again in Delphi next April all together. And now I will ask Professor Nadeau from Harvard. He is chair at the Department of Environmental Health, and she has devoted a life in research. She's a very well-known scientist on how the environment affects our health. Dear Kari, welcome, and the floor is yours.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for all of this organization and for inviting us here. We are honored and delighted, and we look forward to the future as well. This is a critical time. We are at a juxtaposition where we can truly help the world through our programs, through our work with the Academy of Athens and the Delphi Economic Forum, and all of our work across the world. So I also appreciate being here, being invited here, as well as working with my colleagues. If I can have my first slide, thank you so much. So I wanted to really highlight how important this collaboration is. In this world and with this day of making sure that we can create solutions for nutrition and food and environmental science and policy, we need to work together. There are no boundaries. We need to make sure that we have multidisciplinary approaches to solutions as it pertains to global health, planetary health, and our individual health. And the next slide. When we think about what we'd like to do Now and in the future, we really are at a critical point, like I mentioned, a nexus point between agriculture, food systems, and climate change. And now, with the United Nations and the Conference of the Parties in the 28th year, which was in the United Arab Emirates last year, they had a declaration of sustainable agriculture, and we want to now move that forward and put it into action. We also are emphasizing the urgent need for ensuring long-term and short-term food and nutrition security within the planet and the planet's limits while responding to our climate change imperatives. In the next slide. And when we think about what we can do together between the Harvard School of Public Health and the Delphi Economic Forum, and very importantly, our colleagues at the Academy of Athens, we have now put together a memorandum of understanding in which we're developing joint proposals, and we want to include many people, and we welcome all research projects and publications in areas of mutual interest. We want to invite others to participate in seminars and conferences organized by these respective institutions to such areas of mutual interest. We want to organize faculty and student exchanges in the purpose of furthering our collaborations. We want to exchange scientific information. We need to really make sure we share data in the form of publications, instruction materials, and other results that can help all of us make a deep impact in education and in research. And then when possible, we want to also share this data with all of our colleagues on environmental and biological samples too. Thank you. Next slide. So within those goals, our collaboration are critical for the following purpose: to integrate knowledge from nutritional epidemiology and environmental sciences into policy making. It's urgent, like I said, and we need to make sure that we have policy-oriented solutions with science-based research. And developing systematic strategies for food system transformation and addressing the challenges posed by climate change on food security. Those are both direct and indirect effects of climate change on food security and our planet's health and our individual health. I also want to make sure that we can underscore the importance of science policy engagement and advocacy for sustainability with plant-based diets as a means to improve health outcomes and reduce environmental impacts. Next slide. So in conclusion, I want to thank you for your time today and thank my colleagues for moving this wonderful collaboration forward. We have a comprehensive approach to food system transformation with a planetary health perspective. We call everyone here, as well as many others, to integrate sustainable principles into food choices and systems, combining research, intertraditional practices, and ensuring data accuracy for informed decision-making. Our aim, and we welcome all of you to participate, is to create a food system that is resilient, sustainable, and capable of supporting humanity's health and prosperity amid the challenges of climate change. Thank you so much.
Very much, Dr. Nadao. Thank you very much. This is very nice. It is a common dream. But I wish to mention that in case in the audience there are some questions or comments, they could write them down, and then we will forward them to you to answer in written. And the question you agree on that?
Yes.
You agree, Kat? And then in this case, the question or comments could be sent at info@delphiforum.gr. It's very easy. Okay. Now, thank you, Kari, and we move to Mary Rice. Mary is director of the Center for Climate Health, and this is a very important center. Ellen is also professor at Harvard, and she's director of the center. And Ellen, you will explain to us what you are doing, because I think this is a newly created center, and we hope that this center will be a beacon for the lay people. This is my understanding, not only for the scientific community, but also for the lay people. So, Mary, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Antonia. And let me just say that I'm so pleased to support this wonderful partnership between the Delphi Economic Forum, the Academy of Athens, and the Harvard Chan School. As Antonia mentioned, I am the new director of the Center for Climate, Health, and the Global Environment at the Harvard Chan School. I am a physician and an environmental health researcher. If you could please show my first slide. There we are. And please move ahead to the next one. I'd like to tell you all a little bit about this center. It has actually been in existence for more than 25 years, although it used to have a different name, the Center for Health and the Global Environment. But a common theme over all of these years has been to translate innovative climate science from across Harvard and across the scientific community to increase public awareness of the health impacts of climate change, and also to translate that science into action in several different ways. So producing new knowledge, we use interdisciplinary approaches to develop novel research methods to address pressing public health needs at the intersection of climate health and the global environment, and food security and nutrition are at the heart of this. We are also committed to informing policy and practice. So we don't want the research to just get produced and published in a journal and then not be usable to decision makers. So, Antonia, you're absolutely right that our priority is to engage with the public, engage with decision makers and policymakers to have impact. And thirdly, we are committed to preparing the next generation of leaders through our science and through our teaching, educate students at all levels so that they are prepared to face and address the climate and health crisis that we are all dealing with. If you could please move to the next slide. So my focus as the director of this center is solutions. So not only identifying the health of climate change, but moving forward solutions that actually address these problems and evaluating and testing possible solutions. And food systems are not only key to public health, but they in themselves are a climate solution, as you will be hearing from other speakers today. So here on the right, I've shown an image of some work that Sea Change did in collaboration with the International Society for Environmental Epidemiology. And we identified four different health actions that also address the climate crisis. And the third one is healthy food systems by shifting from meat-based methane producing to plant-based diets that benefits health immediately, and it also has a relative to the other interventions of rapid impact on global warming because methane is such a powerful greenhouse gas. Sea Change supports cross-disciplinary research and education on sustainable agriculture, food systems, and climate action for health. And I'm so excited to hear from the other speakers today and thrilled to be supporting this collaboration. Looking forward to the event in Delphi. Thank you.
Hi, Mary. It was very nice, your presentation, and it was, for more of what you said, I will repeat only one thing, that you said one of our duties is to create the new generation of scientists, a new generation of scientists sensitized to the problem of the global warming. And I think through this center you can do a lot and contribute a lot to our collaboration. Thank you for being with us. And
Thank you.
I'm giving the floor. I pass the floor to Dr. Walter Willett. What to say for Dr. Willett? He was director of the Nutrition Center at Harvard for 17 years. He is he's foreign member of the Greek Academy of Sciences, of the Greek Academy. He is the most cited nutritional scientist all over the world. Um, I have been collaborating with him almost half a century. He's a great supporter of the Mediterranean diet, and with his scientific power, he promotes a lot of very difficult and complicated issues. Welcome, Walter. I'm happy that you participate in this endeavor, in this new endeavor, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Trikopoulou. And this is a great pleasure. As you mentioned, we've been working together for decades on this challenging issue. And I also want to thank Mr. Tomokos for bringing us together last spring in Delphi, where we were able to start on this joint adventure. Next slide, please. My first slide. And next, please. I'm going to talk about a path toward a healthy and sustainable diet. As you've heard already, and I think people are here today because they are aware we are facing some great challenges on a global basis. First of all is the increase in global temperatures, essentially climate change, which is happening at an accelerating rate with huge implications that I don't need to go into now. A second major challenge is the global epidemic or pandemic of non-communicable diseases. Diabetes is one indicator of that, and that's going up worldwide in almost every country, fueled by obesity and poor diets. Next slide, please. On top of this challenge, our global population will increase by about 2 billion people by 2050, which makes meeting these other challenges even more difficult. Next slide, please. Of course, the first agenda to limit climate change is elimination of fossil fuels, and we must do that as rapidly as possible. And I know that Greece is working hard on this and making some serious progress. But the food system contributes about 30% of the greenhouse gases. So after fossil fuel consumption, reducing that, really at the same time, we need to address the contribution of the food systems to climate change. And at the same time, that will have important impacts on health. And I'm going to talk about that combination of health impacts and environmental impacts. Next slide, please. I was privileged to chair an international commission that was given this specific challenge: how to feed what will be about 9.8 billion people in 2050 a diet that is both healthy and sustainable. Next slide, please. Our commission spent about 3 years looking at each component of our diet. For example, here I've listed them on the left: whole grains, starchy vegetables, etc. I don't have time to review in a few minutes here what we spent 3 years doing, but basically we came up with a diet that we think could be healthy and sustainable. And I'll go into some of the aspects here, but very briefly, this emphasized plant sources of protein, of course, on top of plenty of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. We set a target for about 1 serving of dairy a day. We could estimate if we went beyond that on a global basis, it would be very hard to control climate change. Next slide, please. About 1 serving per week of red meat, that's beef, pork, or lamb. Next, please. About 2 servings a week of poultry or other poultry. Next slide, please. About 2 eggs per week. Next, please. About 2 servings of fish per week. Next, please. But really emphasizing plant sources of protein, such as beans, lentils, peas, soy, and nuts. And of course, unsaturated fats predominating over saturated fats. And of course, one of the basic parts of the Mediterranean diet is olive oil, which would fit in the unsaturated fat category. Next slide, please. In fact, when we look piece by piece at all the components of diet and we put them all together, what we came to was something that was very consistent with a traditional Mediterranean diet. And I want to thank Professor Trikopoulou because this was, in fact, produced in her kitchen in Porto Rafti. And in other words, this dietary pattern that we described was very consistent with this healthy traditional diet, which as a package has been studied intensively for decades and found to be very healthy. Next slide, please. But having looked at this piece by piece, we could also see that this dietary pattern could be put together with the foods, or traditional foods from around the world. For example, this is a traditional meal from Vietnam. Next slide, please. And we looked also at Costa Rica. And again, the foods are different, the flavors are different, but still a very healthy, sustainable, and plant-based diet. Now, when we say plant-based, this doesn't mean necessarily being a vegan, but it means about 2 servings a day of animal source protein, one of those being dairy. Next slide, please. After doing this a review of this process, looking at the components of a healthy, sustainable diet, we went back to our large studies that we've been conducting since 1980, where we've been following over 200,000 men and women, tracking their diets and then tracking their rates of heart disease, cancer, etc., and also, of course, total mortality. And we then scored the diets of each of these individuals, looking over time, and related that to their future risk of premature death. And what we see here on top, this is women, and on the bottom is men. A very stepwise reduction in total mortality for each step forward toward this more healthy, sustainable diet. And those in the top 10% compared to the bottom 10% had about a 30% lower risk of overall mortality, which is, of course, huge. Next slide, please. We then went on to look at the impact, the potential impact of moving toward this healthier diet on a global basis. So we then scored the diets of every country around the world, almost 200 countries. Next slide, please. And from that information, we were able to calculate that if the whole world moved to this healthier, sustainable dietary pattern, that would reduce premature deaths by about 27% globally. In the United States, since we have more non-communicable diseases, it would be about 31% of adult deaths. This is a paper we published just 2 weeks ago. Next slide, please. We took the next step of looking at the greenhouse gas emission, the changes in greenhouse gas emissions and other environmental impacts that could result from just moving to the top 20% compared to the bottom 20%. In the adherence to this, what we call a planetary health diet. And we could see that this shift would reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the food systems by about 29%, reduction of fertilizer use, and very importantly, about a 50% lower land use or cropland use. And that's mainly because we would be eating the corn, soy, beans, other foods more directly rather than running them through animals, and also some reduction in irrigation water as well. And that reduction of cropland use is really important because that would free up land that we could use for reforesting, biofuels, and many other uses besides just running it through animals. Next slide, please. So this is a very brief overview of what we've been looking at. And we know a lot about where we should go, although implementing this exactly will depend on local context, for example, soils, climate, and other conditions. But we would like to think as scientists that there's a direct line going from science to policy or practice. In fact, the reality is that it's very difficult to make these shifts. Sometimes there's just a lot of inertia. Other times there's active resistance by vested interest, and that wouldn't be surprising. But in the end, we need to go toward policy and practice, and that will be much of the meeting that we hope to address. We hope to address much of this in our meeting in Delphi in the coming April. So I hope many of you will be able to join us there and help us identify solutions for Greece and elsewhere. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing many of you in Delphi.
Thank you, Dr. Willett, and I'm sure that again, with your hard data, you will support a lot to go from science to policy. This is one of the goals in the Delphi meeting, and I hope everybody to contribute to that. And now I am moving to the next speaker. It's Dr. Petros Koutrakis, which is Greek and not only Greek. He's from Crete, from South Crete. And I'm very happy because he's a renowned scientist with a lot of publication. He's right now at Harvard professor of environmental sciences and director of the Cyprus Harvard program. He's a great supporter of this memorandum of understanding with, of course, the previous speakers. And but also he's involved also with the Greek problems. So, Dr. Koutrakis, the floor is yours.
It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, Mr. Xomokos, for supporting our efforts. And also, I am a director of the Harvard Cyprus program, which is an endowment program, a donation from the government of Cyprus about 20 years ago of $25 million. And the purpose of this endowment is to promote research and education in the fields of environmental health and public health for Cyprus, Greece, and the region. So it's a great opportunity for this endowment fund to support, to address environmental and public health problems in the region. And our faculty and our students are committed toward this effort. May I have the first slide, please? So I would like to point and focus on on Greece and the Mediterranean region because it is one that has been affected greatly by climate change. Next slide, please. The global agreements about reduction of carbon dioxide emissions, they address the future. However, if we stop today emitting CO2, it will take 100 to 200 years to go back to the levels of 1970s. And also probably it will take 100 or few hundred years to bring back the Earth to the conditions before the Industrial Revolution. So as far as we're concerned, the global warming is not reversible, at least for the foreseeable future. Next slide, please. An important publication in Nature last April showed that the economic impacts of climate change will be severe. By 2050, it will be almost $40 trillion. This is about 1.5 times the GDP of Europe. And these impacts will be disproportionate, will vary by region. For instance, northern countries like Canada, Scandinavia, they will benefit from climate change, whereas areas like in the mid latitudes and south would be affected by climate change. So we anticipate that if we really do not do anything about climate change, that our income will decrease because we have to address all these natural phenomena and the loss of productivity and loss of farming. Next slide, please. As I said before, Greece will be affected because we are between two climatic zones which are moving from the south to the north. And as a result, we will see farming in the southern parts of Greece to be very challenging due to the lack of water and the increase in temperature. As I'll show you in a minute, the Mediterranean surface waters have warmed, and that means that we are going to have floods similar to those we experienced in Thessaly, and also we will see formation of microclimates within Greece. Um, as the deserts get drier, we will experience more desert dust storms, which can be devastating for our agriculture and, of course, public health. And also, global changes will affect the Mediterranean area. One of them is the movement of water masses in the Atlantic. Can I have the next slide, please? So I will note two publications that they show the effects of climate change in the mid latitudes where Greece is. And the first showed, next slide please, that the, may I have this next slide please? This shows that the surface waters have warmed at a faster rate than the average waters. This shows the increase between 82 and 21, about 40 years, and the increase in the eastern part of Mediterranean are about zero point 0.6 centigrades per decade. And just to give you an idea, the global temperature over this period has increased about 1.2 centigrade. This, of course, has tremendous impacts on fishery and also on the species, the invasive species that they come through Suez to Mediterranean, that they are favored by the increased temperatures. Next slide, please. Another paper has shown that the Mediterranean type climates, which include Mediterranean, California, Argentina, and Chile, they have warmed at a faster rate than the average Earth temperature increase, and especially the Mediterranean, the Northern Africa, and the Southern Europe have increased at a faster rate. So I think Greece and Cyprus and other countries in the region will be the ground zero for climate change. And whatever we do, it will be important because that really will help other countries to deal with the climatic changes. Next slide, please. So what do these climate impacts mean for Greece? Increased fires, which we experienced, more heat waves, more flooding, less snow in the mountains, which means less water during the summer, lack of water, which we already experience in many parts of Greece, destruction of agriculture, increase in energy consumption because of air conditioning use, decrease in productivity. It's very hard to work outdoors during harsh weather conditions, less revenue from tourism because the summer will be very hot, and of course, more mortality and morbidity. And we already have done studies in Cyprus and maybe in Greece, a few showing the effects on mortality, on hospital admissions, visits for psychological conditions, etc. So it's a serious public health problem that we really need to address. Next slide, please. So we talk about the crisis, and everybody is concerned about the future of this planet. We can also approach this with a more positive attitude and consider this as an opportunity that will enable us to make changes, changes which are necessary, moving to alternative energy sources, eating less meat, develop sustainable industrial products, etc. So maybe we can take this opportunity and try to build a better world, a world that is going to be better for our future generations. So we can produce locally and consume locally as we did 50, 100 years ago. We can, in Greece and Cyprus, we can produce most of the energy because we have sun and aeolian energy. We can produce most of the food. We used to produce everything in the 60s, and now we have to import everything from outside. We can democratize our economy. We can bring back cooperatives and private enterprises that they can have develop small energy plants or aqua or smart farms. We can we can develop technologies, and we have very good universities that they can help us to build sustainable materials, reduce energy consumption, replace plastics by bioplastics, which will come from agricultural products and waste. And also, I think it's very important for the future that policy decisions are based, uh, consider actually the environmental and public health impacts of whatever we do, whatever we produce, and whatever we consume. We hope to address all these issues at the Delphi Forum. We will go more in depth about the health effects, about the opportunities for business development. And I have two questions. If I go to the next slide, please. That The first came from Mr. Konstantinos Chartsukakis. I'm sorry, Chartsulakis. He is a senior researcher in olive growing and irrigation from ELCO. Uh, he asked about sustainability and biodiversity are key issues for olive growing. Super intensive plantations are compatible with these issues under climate crisis. And the next question also is related. Can I have the next slide, please? Is from Mr. Evangelos Vergos, President, Traditional Olive Grove Management Body of AMFISA. And taking climate crisis into consideration with its long-term severe consequences related to water availability and growth microenvironment, what direction is expected to take future scientific achievements to promote food security at its best? And I think I will address part of these questions, but I think also Dr. Willett will add something. Let's go to the next slide. The future of agriculture. We are going to move to small farming, but in terms of the olive trees, we are going to see a movement from the south to the north, similar to what we're experiencing with wineries in California. The California wineries have moved to Oregon and Washington states, which are north of California, even in Canada. So we see that climate makes growing vineyards and producing wine very challenging. In California, there is a big uh, conflict between all farmers and citizens because the water resources are scarce. So we are going to see the same thing in Greece, I'm afraid, and we will see more production in the north. Actually, countries like Austria are starting to plant olive trees because the conditions will be more favorable there. Now, there are other kind of quick solutions. People in Crete, for instance, they talk about planting olive trees at higher elevations where it's cooler, although wind might be a problem. or using better irrigation methods, trying to be more judicious about water consumption. All these things will help a little bit, but I think the major shifts in olive production and wine productions will be inevitable. And I think it's pretty concerning because in places like in Crete, where I come from, olives are part of our DNA. We start producing during the Minoan civilization 4,000 years ago, and it's really hard to see that the environmental conditions have been very challenging for olive production. Next slide, please. So the future of agriculture, it will be in controlled environments. It's an emerging technology that has started in countries like Korea, like the Middle East, where they cannot produce their own food and they have realized that they must become independent. And this is inside buildings where the solar light is simulated using LEDs. It's We consume only 5% of the water as compared to traditional practices, saves 90% of the fertilizers, which otherwise are lost and they go to the aquifers where they create eutrophication. Do not use pesticides, are independent of weather, so we don't have to worry about droughts or heat waves or hurricanes. And they don't require a lot of land. And the food we produce, we can consume it locally. We don't have to bring strawberries from Argentina, right? We can produce them 12 months a year. So that really has tremendous advantages. Next. So, as I said, the future will bring us a lot of technologies like CO2 can be the CO2 can be collected from the atmosphere, injected into these farming houses to accelerate photosynthesis. These technologies, they use less labor, which is a big problem for many countries right now. More human conditions because workers, they don't have to work outside under harsh environmental conditions. Uh, they require high capital, but the higher production uh, can be used to pay off this high capital cost. Right now, it's limited to greens and vegetables, but there is a lot of research right now trying to extend this to other plants, and also now there is research into nano trees. We can make small orange trees or other almond trees that they require less water, and it's easier to grow inside controlled environments. There is these technologies require a lot of sun, a lot of energy, but we can use the solar energy or the wind energy to sustain them. Of course, we need more research, and I think Greece has both great scientists, researchers, and also we have knowledge of farming that can really we can have a great synergy try to move to these technologies. Next slide. So guess what is this? This is a farmhouse in Korea. Next slide, please. Inside here, you can produce organic lettuce. Next slide, please. You can use robots instead of people, reduce labor to produce large quantities. And finally, just to give you an idea, this facility, it works already. It's an indoor vertical hydroponic farm. It's about 2,000 square meters. The production area is 6,000 square meters, produces leafy vegetables, and the production is about 10,000 heads or 700 tons per year. And as I said, right now they use artificial lighting from electricity, which can be replaced by solar. So, as I said, and we'll talk about this in Delphi, there are many opportunities to transform the economy, and especially in areas where we have educated, uh, we have researchers and people who know about agriculture. Thank you very much.
Much, Dr. Kutrakis.
These are some, just a couple of slides. This is from my trip to Korea. Next slide. These are strawberries produced inside a bakery that they can be served, and these things exist, so it's not science fiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kutrakis. I mean, this apparently the future it is very difficult to adapt to it, but we have to. This is my understanding, at least. I cannot imagine to produce vegetables in South Crete like that. But if the olive trees they will not be able to survive, either we have
Yes.
to go away from South Crete or to
Yeah.
adapt this proposal. I mean, as you can see, there is a lot of discussion for the Delphi meeting in April and a lot of questions. For the moment being, we do not have time, but as I mentioned before, if you wish to comment or to put some questions on what Dr. Kutrakis and the other speakers mentioned, you can send your comments or question to info at Delphi for Delphi Forum one word.gr. And then, depending on the question, our colleagues they will answer to all of you. And now I have to speak a little bit, 5 minutes, and then everything I wanted to say is already said by the previous speakers. But I wish to focus that there is a there is an apparent urge to reconsider the food systems in order to reorganize them. And when we're saying food system, we do not mean only the food consumption, we mean the food the food production and the way the food is processed. So it's strange that no much attention has been paid to that, although 30% of the gas emissions they are um, they are due to the food systems. So actually, in my personal work, I have spent a lot of time studying the Mediterranean diet, studying what the Greeks they are eating, and trying to persuade the Greeks not to abandon the traditional diet, what they was recommended by the previous speakers, which means eat locally. Mediterranean diet, dear colleagues and friends, has evolved the last 10 years from being a healthy diet to a sustainable diet. And I wish to remind you that 10 years ago, 2010, more than 10 years, when UNESCO recognized the Mediterranean diet as an intangible cultural heritage, it did that not because Mediterranean diet was healthy, but it was an expression of a way of living, an expression which embodied a lot of cultural issue and religious habits, and it was a kind of a way of living, I said before. And there are associated with a lot of skills and ways of producing and producing and um, producing and processing the food. So there are a lot of lessons to learn if we look carefully at the Mediterranean diet. And this is my plea. May I have, please, the first slide, my slides, please? So I wish to bring to your attention that for the 7 consecutive years, the Mediterranean diet was first across the finishing line in the annual race for best diet. For 7 consecutive years, it was first as being healthy and something which we forget, tasty. Because Mediterranean diet is tasty. It's a plant-based diet which does not say no to anything. It's a question of how much and how often. We say reduce the foods of animal origin. This way you help the environment, you help your health. And this also a public health goal. It's also is an individual responsibility. Of course, food system, as I mentioned, is food production, food processing, and consumption. And then mainly I spent my life trying to influence the consumption. No, we have also to look very carefully. It's not at the individual level. It's a decision on a policy level, on the production, the way food is produced, and the way food is processed. Next slide, please. So, from the national survey, Adria, in which we examine, we get a detailed information about the food consumption of the adult Greeks. Excuse me. We found out that there is the person which they adhere a lot to the Mediterranean diet is at the level almost of 30%. But if we go to the persons who they are above 65, then those are the persons who they adhere in the population of the Mediterranean diet. It's much less as the age decrease to the extent that the children in the south, they eat less Mediterranean than the children in the northern European countries. It's a shame. So, next slide. Next slide, please. What we should do? What are the plans towards sustainable food consumption and respect for innovation? And what is meant by innovation? Yesterday I was in a meeting and I said that they make chicken from peas, making flour from peas and then make chicken. And then I went to another meeting here in Greece, and then I was talking and promoting olives, and then I was promoting the traditional way of curing olive oils, not with the caustic soda. And then they start talking about producing prebiotics from olives. This is not Mediterranean diet. Mediterranean diet probiotics were given by the traditionally cured olives. The Mediterranean diet is from the traditional prepared yogurt. So, and what are the strategies planned for safeguarding Mediterranean diet? These two issues, which hopefully we are going to discuss in our 25 Delphi meeting, and we will try to review with your help, with your contribution, with your participation, and update on state of food, health, and environment global. We are children of the world anyway, and in Greece. Having said that, I pass again the floor to Dr. Koutrakis firstly, and then to Dr. Willett to answer to the questions which currently some colleagues they sent yesterday and even today. Petros.
Yes.
You have to answer the questions.
I did answer. There is a third question that Dr. Willett wanted to answer.
You don't know want to expand more. I thought that you wanted to expand more.
No,
No.
I did already answer the questions. I showed them. I
Okay.
I thought there
So,
was a
Dr.
third one.
Willett,
The third
Dr. Willett,
question, yes. Let's see. The third question, maybe that could be posted on the screen. I think it was about how what we've been describing would be integrated in the One Health agroecology movement, if I remember correctly. Uh, and very much so that there are, just to step back a little bit, there are, I find it helpful to think of three major pillars of where we need to go for a healthy, sustainable food system. The first is better and more effective, efficient, and sustainable ways of producing food. Second is reduction of food loss and waste, and we unfortunately do lose a lot of the food in our food chain, often not really reaching the market and then wasted at home. And third is shifting the diets. In countries like Europe, in the United States, where we have a heavier animal source kind of diet, shifting our diets toward the traditional Mediterranean pattern will have the biggest impact. But in other parts of the world, people are already, or at this point in time, uh, largely because of lower income, consuming diets that are of smaller environmental impact. Uh, and there's not shifting the diet is not is important in terms of sustainability. Unfortunately, those diets are rapidly shifting toward the less healthy, more impactful kinds of diets. So, preserving traditional diets where they exist is a high priority. But to go back to the question, basically, it is absolutely important to look at the production methods. And Professor Koutrakis dealt with this issue. Of course, it partly dealt with this issue. It's huge, complicated. And I think it's really important to emphasize 2 points that he made. One is that the context is changing very rapidly. Climate change is accelerating so fast. We never, I think, 30 or 40 years ago, we knew climate change was coming, but we thought this would be something we'd see in a few hundred years, not right before our eyes as we're seeing now. So what may have worked 20 years ago, 30 years ago, is not going to work now or going forward. So change is inevitable. Uh, uh, but and I think again back to the question, uh, we do need to look very closely at production methods, taking into account change and very much taking into account the local context. Professor Koutrakis made that point very clearly, and there's no single answer. Uh, but this will require investment in research. Some of it is enclosed agricultural systems, but I think we also need to look at outdoor agriculture as well. It may well be that growing foods like dates and cashews and some tropical uh, kinds of products will be the norm in southern Greece, and of course moving northward with time. So this, because things are changing so rapidly, no single solution. Uh, Research in agricultural production methods and in how we process food, how we transport it, how we preserve it, these have to take a high priority because fortunately we know in terms of the overall diet what our human biology hasn't changed. We still need a healthy diet, but how to produce that diet will be something that it will require increasing investment and attention. And ultimately, yes, we need to look at uh, both the foods we produce in terms of productivity, but also how they will preserve the environment, hopefully improve the environment. There's quite a bit of interest, and actually for strong reasons, in production methods that actually capture carbon in the soil and in trees, for example. When we The situation is daunting. When we did this review, I discussed if we do all of these things right, uh, shift our diets toward more Mediterranean type plant based, improve production methods, reduce food loss and waste, we can just barely feed the world a healthy, sustainable diet. We need to do everything right. And again, all the more reason to be gathering together in Delphi, sharing experiences, sharing knowledge, and planning for a future that if we do things right, it can be much healthier and more sustainable. So it's worth paying attention and giving a lot of thought and research to these really critical topics.
Thank you, Dr. Willett. Thank you very much, all of you. I think that if any of the speakers wish to add something, the floor is for everybody. Kari, if you want to add something, Dr. Nadal, Dr. Rice,
Yes, thank you so
Mary,
much.
you want to add something?
Yes, thank you. I just want to add, we are so grateful to you as well as your colleagues to be able to invite us here from Harvard to participate with the Academy of Athens at the Delphi Forum. And we look forward to seeing everyone hopefully in a few months. So I hope everyone has a happy new year and maybe
It's
feel free to
beautiful.
speak.
But also keep in mind that also we have to plan a multidisciplinary seminar. And this is one of the goals of our memorandum of understanding. We need to create new scientists. We need young people to be exposed to this knowledge. Excuse me, I have this problem. And
Yes.
we have also to work on that the coming months of developing this multidisciplinary seminar. I make a plea for you to that.
Good. We just started interdisciplinary concentration. Physical human nutrition is one of the people in charge of that with Gaurav Basu, who's part of Mary Rice's group, and they have 50 students. And so I think it will be important to invite them on Zoom and help them, as you say, get supported, Antonia, so that they can be the new future for all of us.
Okay, welcome.
Scientists and other places as well.
Sorry, I have a laryngitis. I suffer. Walter, you sorry, Walter or Pedro, you want to continue or carry discussion a little bit?
No, I just want to say that we already have invited people from different countries to participate, to share their experience, and also as part of our collaboration with the Cyprus University of Cyprus, we have received a large Horizon research grant in collaboration with Sea Change as well from the United States to study the effects of climate on health and vectors of diseases in Greece and Cyprus. So we really are committed to work with universities and other organizations to address the challenges of climate change and how we can really see this as an opportunity rather just as a crisis.
Okay, so we have a lot of work ahead of us. Thank you, all of you, for being with us. And I hope that all this discussion will be projected in a nice video. I don't know, Mary, you can help us to that. I think that the organizer, they said that they could produce a video, so it's up to us to promote it, if you think so. Mary?
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Yes, I hear you.
This we'll put a recording of this wonderful webinar online, and I just want to say how excited I am about this gathering, how much I have learned personally from the three talks that you each gave today, how much more there is to learn, how much work we have ahead of us, and how excited I am to meet all the stakeholders and experts in Delphi, and to bring in our students as well so that they can learn from this. As Dr. Naidoo said, there's tremendous interest among the student body at the Harvard Chan School. We have a planetary health concentration that's immensely popular, and I would imagine that universities around the world are experiencing this same wave of eagerness to learn and to make a difference for planetary health. So thank you.
That's very good news. Under your
To say something.
guidance, we're going to proceed. Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank
Antonia,
you.
Walter wanted to say
Yes,
something.
yes,
Walter,
Walter. Yes, Walter,
Well,
please.
please.
well, sure, thank you.
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to mention that we really need people from all sectors to be involved here.
Ah, yes,
That
yes,
we need the
yes.
educational system to be more engaged in teaching and also providing healthy foods. We need the healthcare sector to be much more engaged. We've been almost completely missing in action here. Learning about teaching the medical students, our nurses, about what healthy nutrition is, and then how to put that into practice. We need the food service operators who provide food out of the home to be engaged. We need obviously the economic sector as well to make this economically feasible and make the healthy choice affordable. And I could go on, but hopefully we'll have representation from all of these sectors in Delphi next spring because everybody needs to be part of the solution. It's not simple.
That's very important what you said. And I was thinking that last year, a part of the big meeting which we were offered by Mr. Chomokos one day in the main meeting 2 hours symposium, which was very short, and the politicians they were there. We have a pre-meeting, and then we have to think how the pre-meeting could be open and to invite more participants. Of course, we do not have money to make invitation and to pay for coming representative or for these sections, but it might be good to try to attract them to come and to discuss. But even more, I think that having a seminar before the original, let's say before the original Delphi meeting every year, a seminar of 2 to 3 days organized by the Harvard and the Academy of Athens, and multidisciplinary to educate young people. But this needs a collaborative work, a work and even to join us young students and to see. Yes, please, Kari. Yes, you, you want to say
I totally
something?
agree. Yeah, I totally agree. I think we have students, faculty, and I agree with Walt. We need multidisciplinary, make sure people come to the table. That's why the Delphi Forum is so great because we do have attractions and we can even go bigger. The World Economic Forum is the next stage, Walt. I don't know if you're interested, and that's coming up too soon, but we were invited to talk there as well at some point. So I think, Antonia, you've done such a great job, and now we can go even bigger to get multidisciplines involved as well as our own agricultural
With you,
department.
Kari, with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
and it's
I hope you have
it's
a great
okay.
day.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. And sorry
Bye.
for
Thank you. That
coughing,
was
but
wonderful. No, Antonia, that was
sorry,
wonderful. Thank you
apology,
for your
but
leadership. You are amazing. Thank you,
I
Antonia.
cannot control the cough.
Oh,
Thank
hope you're
you.
Okay,
feeling
no,
better
thank
soon,
you.
Antonio.
Thank you. Thank you. Feel better. Okay, bye.
Bye
Happy
bye.
holidays.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.